Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give a few minutes to see who can jump on. Hope you've had a great week. So happy you're joining us today. Okay. All right, it's 2 o'clock. We're on a time crunch here. We want to get as much information in as we possibly can. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the 2021 Harmony webinar series. And this one is for May. I'm so happy we are back. Missing last month's webinar was odd for me, so I'm really grateful to have be back on track and be presenting for you all. We have a great presentation today, Ethical Considerations for Recovery Coaches, facilitated by Mazel. She is the Director of Alumni and Recovery Support Services for the Harmony Foundation. For those of you new to the webinar and aren't familiar, Harmony Foundation is nestled on a 43-acre campus in the Rocky Mountains just outside of Estes Park. We are a residential rehab that offers comprehensive treatment for adults and their family members. So a little more about us. We believe that long-term recovery from alcohol and other drugs is possible. We have over 50 years of addiction treatment, and we have fostered a generation of long-term recovery who supports our clients and their families for a lifetime. We are a 70-bed residential treatment program. We also offer a full detox program and an IOP program. If you would like more information on any of these, please visit harmonyfoundationinc.com, or you can call our admissions staff at 866-686-7867 with any questions. So just a few things before we get started. This webinar will be recorded, and we do use a software that tracks how long our attendees are involved. You must be on the webinar for 45 minutes or more in order to receive a CEU certificate. You will receive that certificate by email, and I will have them out to you by end of day Friday, May 28th. If you have any problems, issues, or your certificate does not arrive, please feel free to reach out to me at cweeks@harmonyfoundationinc.com, and I'll be happy to help you. We will have an online evaluation, a survey, so to speak, sent out to you at the end of the presentation. If you happen to miss the window that it pops up when this ends, it will be included in your email with your certificate as well. Again, if you have any issues, you can, by all means, reach out to me. As I mentioned, this is recorded, so if you would like to review this presentation or you have to jump off early and miss part of it, you can still capture it on our website under the Professional CEU series under Harmony EDU on our website. Again, that link can be found on Harmony Foundation website. So I'm so excited today. We have Mazel. She's this amazing individual that works for Harmony Foundation, who speaks, eats, breathes, and loves alumni. A little about Michael. Her journey began into the addiction treatment and recovery world with her own drug and alcohol addiction and subsequent treatment in December of 2015. Michael went on to get her CPFS certification as well as her recovery coach trainer certification through CCAR. Michael serves as co-president on the national board for TPAS and is also the co-chair for the Colorado chapter of TPAS. She hosts a podcast titled Monday State of Mind that focuses on how recovery tools can benefit everyone's state of mind. Lastly, she is a published author of her book. She co-authored with 2 other people in recovery titled Drowning in Addiction, Sink or Swim. And she is so passionate about recovery and chooses to recover out loud. So with that, I'm so happy to turn this whole presentation over to Michael as she has a ton of great information to share with you. So Michael, I am going to turn this over to you.
Wonderful. All right, let me go ahead and get my presentation up for all of you. All right. We'll start from the beginning. First, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here with me for this next almost hour. And I am so excited to talk about ethical considerations for recovery coaches, as this is an area of expertise for me. It's something that I am super passionate about, especially now because recovery coaching is becoming a very integral part of people's recovery pathway. Recovery coaching is really that missing link between getting out of treatment and whether it's finding a great therapist, going to a recovery group, whether it's 12 steps, SMART, you name it. Recovery coaches really bridge that gap to really help people get on their feet to thrive in recovery. So with that being said, because recovery coaching is becoming so widely recognized, and it's also becoming something that is recognized by insurance companies, you guys, which is a really big deal. You can actually get reimbursed through certain insurance companies for recovery coaching. That's just how well it's being recognized, and I'm super honored that it is being recognized in that fashion. So along, with that, with us being able to have that level of recognition, we have to have ethics, right? I mean, ethics are what really keep us in check. It allows us to have a form of morals and values. And so with that, we're going to dive in to talk all about ethical considerations for recovery coaches. All right. For today, the objectives of this presentation. At the conclusion of this workshops, participants will be able to, number one, understand why ethics are important to recovery coaching. We're going to define ethical terms for recovery coaches. And lastly, we're going to recognize and understand the process for making ethical decisions as recovery coaches. So, juicy information, here we go. Let's start with the basics, right? So what are ethics? Ethics, in regards to, and we'll look at this in regards to recovery coaching, and this kind of pertains to, everything as a whole. Ethics are a set of developed and accepted standards or principles of behavior and actions for both individuals and organizations within a profession. They are a standard or code of behavior that is created to enhance service provision and create a climate of dignity and respect. Ethics are an agreed upon set of morals, values, and conduct standards accepted by the group, right? So we are looking at within ethics, these standards that are being developed for recovery coaches so that we have guidelines on how we can show up with integrity, right? We want to be able to continue to not only do what we do, but do it with integrity and do it in a manner that is respected by, the therapeutic industry. So moving on, the terms that we're going to go over here are 4 terms that are really, hammered home with recovery coaches, because these different terms are very important for coaches to understand, especially because what we do with recovery coaching, it's a gray line. And I say that it's a gray line because we work with individuals on a peer-to-peer level. The power differential is not that of a therapist to a client, right? We are peer-to-peer because we do share lived experience. Like, that is one of the biggest attractions for people to work with recovery coaches, is because of our lived experience and the way that people can relate to us. With that being said, though, that can also cause that gray line of, well, what is acceptable, right? What is not acceptable? So let's go ahead and break down these terms to kind of better understand, and I'll give some examples as well for you to kind of place with these terms. The first one we're going to go over is iatrogenic, and that is when behavior can cause unintended harm, right? examples of this can be, especially on a peer-to-peer level with a recovery coach, sometimes it can be in the way we are too friendly, right, with our client. It can be, if we feel that our relationship with them is progressing in a more close friendship manner than the client feels, we might say a joke that is not, we might be saying a joke, we might say something from our past that we're trying to relate to them with, and we don't know that that behavior is causing unintended harm. So we really have to be aware, ethically speaking, of what is our behavior doing, and how is it affecting our client, right? The next term is multi-party vulnerability. Which is the recovery coach's action or intention that may injure multiple parties. This word is probably one that I use almost on a daily basis, everyone, because our actions and intentions can injure multiple parties. And what that looks like is, if you're working with a client, right? And we're working with them, and we are referring out, we are telling them certain places to go, places that we feel are going to enhance their recovery. It could be that we are referring them to, whether it be a gym or maybe it's a church that's going to really help out their recovery. But we don't understand that when we refer these people to these different places, what is being surrounded by them? Like, is that church? Is that gym? Is it in an area that is safe? Are there bars around? Are there pot shops? Are there things that are going to cue that person to relapse, right? And so if that client relapses, our action by referring them to a place that has in an area that is not safe, it can injure multiple parties, meaning it can injure their loved ones that are supporting them. It could injure, if they end up walking into that liquor store, or that pot shop, it could injure anybody that's around them if they relapse, right? So with our actions and how we work with clients, we really have to take, not just looking at it at a granular level with just us and the client, we have to take a bird's eye view of who is all involved by the actions or the intentions that we are doing, that could end up affecting not just the client that we have. Is it going to affect, like I said, their family, significant others? Is it going to affect friends? Is it going to affect meeting with their therapist, right? Is it going to affect them going to meetings? So I always want to make sure, when coaches are getting into this business and getting into working with clients, really understand the implications of what can happen um, when you are seeding them into certain areas of their recovery to help benefit them. The next part of this, at the next term, is boundary management, right? And I know a lot of you probably on this webinar can relate to boundaries, right? Decisions made may increase or decrease intimacy within the relationship. Like I had stated before, we have we have a peer-to-peer relationship. And so we have to understand, what are the decisions that we are making? Again, are they causing an intimacy within the relationship that is obviously not intended? But we have to be aware of, what are we saying yes and no to? Especially, an example of this too can be allowing the client to be able to call or text at any hour of the day, right? Like being able to just say, hey, like, I will drop everything to go and meet you, or just, opening yourself up to just being available, at any hour of the day. Like I just said, like that can increase an intimacy within the relationship that is not intended, because what could be the intention of the recovery coach is to say, hey, I just want to be here to help you and to make sure that the plan we have in place is working. So that's why I'm going to open up lines of communication, wherein the client can take that a very different way. And they can look at that as like, oh my gosh, you're available for me all the time. And that can develop a different level of codependency within that relationship that is not conducive to a helpful pathway to recovery. It's actually harmful. So boundaries, you guys gotta love them, but they're tricky sometimes. They really are, especially because of our peer-to-peer relationship. And that is why, again, boundaries, and I'll go back to multi-party vulnerability, are super important for recovery coaches to pay attention to. The last ethical term that I want to cover is fiduciary, where recovery coach assumes a special duty or obligation for the care of another. And that can mean a multitude of different things, wherein the recovery coach might choose to also show up maybe as a caretaker for the client's children, or to be like, hey, you don't have a car, I'll go pick up your kids. Or, hey, like, does your dad need to be picked up from the hospital? I'll go and do that. So it's the recovery coach caring almost too much, or just being able to, we are mixing our roles and assuming other duties that are outside of our scope of practice, which can be, again, harmful to the client. So we need to, again, I like to say the word a lot. Well, shall I say the phrase? We have to stay in our lane as recovery coaches. It is imperative, because we cannot take on these other duties, because as we take on other duties, or we think that that's okay, that is when the water gets muddy. That is when we lose our integrity. That is when we are not performing in an ethical manner, right? So these four terms: iatrogenic, multi-party vulnerability, boundary management, fiduciary, these are key factors every day when we're working with clients to be so aware of. Because, again, it's not just about when we are working with our clients, it's not just about what is happening in that session. It's about what happened in that session when we are working with those clients. When they go out into the world, is it going to be beneficial to them, or is it going to cause harm to others overall? Moving on. We're going to hit on now some core recovery values that recovery coaches have, along with ethical conduct that is associated with these recovery core values. All right. So based on this information right here on the slide does come from CCAR, the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery, on what our recovery coach roles are. So these are our roles that we serve for our clients. We are a motivator and we are cheerleaders. So we cheer them on. We are an ally and we are a confidant to our clients. We are truth tellers. We are role models and we are mentors. We are problem solvers. We are resource brokers. We are advocates. And I forgot to put, we are advocates, big A advocate and little a advocate. We are community organizers. We are friends and companions. We are also lifestyle consultants. And so within these roles, there are ethical manners in which we still have to pertain to, and how we have to carry ourselves every single day, especially because, again, I'll keep referring back to that peer-to-peer relationship. There is a minimal power differential, and we have to, again, remind ourselves at the end of the day, it is about making sure that this is about the client and this is not about us. This is about humility and helping them, and not inserting our ego through our lived experience, which, and that pertains in the motivator and cheerleader aspect. Like, ethically speaking, we have to carry ourselves in a way to motivate them that is recovery positive, right? And again, not bashing or not being negative towards other pathways. To be an ally and a confidant, I'm sure a lot of you on here that might be therapists know that confidentiality and being an ally is a big deal. Like, we have to be able to be trusted. Truth teller, it's that's something that I love, in the sense that we are very honest with our clients, because we don't like to sugarcoat anything that is, for them. Because if one of the values of recovery coaches, we feel that sometimes if we sugarcoat, that is, again, that is being harmful to their recovery and not helpful. So, truth telling, we still have to, the way we tell our truth and the way we relay information to our clients, it needs to be in a manner that is of value, that is empowering and not disempowering. Role model, mentor. So role model, again, it's, walk the walk. Like we cannot ask our clients to do something that we would be unwilling to do for our recovery. So again, it's, when you come back to ethics, it's about that, like our morals, our values, being able to, again, like do what we say, not say as we do, right? Next is a problem solver. So we help navigate those problems that clients might have that keep barriers up to their recovery. And we want to be able to attack and address these problems in a way that's going to be beneficial to them, for them to feel a sense of independence, for them to feel a sense of worthiness, that, hey, like, they were able to figure it out, and we are there to help guide them and not give them all the answers. So that's a really big one too. The next one is a resource broker, aka I like to call this, wearing a tool belt with a bunch of tools in it. We, ethically speaking, this is huge, because if we are resource brokers, we need to make sure that whoever or wherever we are referring our clients to, that it is also a place that carries themselves with integrity. It is a place that I would send my family members to, right? We want to make sure that they are also a place that has ethical guidelines. We like, because again, it falls on us. If we are referring them to a place that is not healthy, that brings back the word multi-party vulnerability. There's going to be multiple parties that are involved that are going to get hurt if we do not do our due diligence on the resources that we are using. So the toolkit, the tool belt that we wear has got to be full of places that have really incredible ethical guidelines. The next part of our roles as recovery coaches is we are advocates. So we advocate not only for our clients, but we advocate for the recovery community at large. And again, that is something that the way we show up and the way we carry ourselves is a big deal. And people can really like honestly see, hey, are they really advocating, or are they not? Like I said, it's big A, little a. Advocate for the recovery community, advocate for the client. Community organizer. So we really help to get them involved in community events. And so again, this brings it back to when we are community organizers and we're looking at community events that are going on that we believe will really enhance their recovery. We want to make sure, hey, like, is this a really honest, good place to put our client? Because I'll also bring back multi-party vulnerability again. Who all is involved that might be affected if we seed them into these different events, right? So we, as recovery coaches, not only along with the resources, but with the community, like with the different events that are going on within the communities that we work in, we need to be aware of what is happening. Again, ethically speaking, and is it and really, like, at its core, is it something that's going to benefit our client as a whole? Friend and companion, and this is something we're going to touch on a lot in just a bit. Not only are we their coach, but coaches that have a peer-to-peer level. We serve our clients on a friend basis, and the reason I say that is because we not only do we sit there and do we listen to them, but we share a part of us. And so unlike therapists, they get to know us. So we open up, I shouldn't say open up, we break our walls down, and so that they can actually relate. And so when they can relate to us on a deeper level, and it really is, like, in all honesty, an intimate level, because we share things about our past whether they are, it's general or it has a little more detail that's going to benefit them, that opens that door to be serve as more of a friend, because we don't have to carry, I like to kind of call it that professional language. We relate to them with a language that they know and that they trust, and that they feel that it's not authentic, right? We are super authentic in the way we communicate, and we don't bring in a bunch of clinical terms or things that we don't know to make us look smart, right? Like we share our experience, strength, and hope. That's what we do. When it comes to lifestyle consulting, also ethically speaking, like, it's not just about their recovery path, right? It's not just about finding a pathway to get them into in a community for recovery that is working for them. We also help them, like, on a consultant basis, like, hey, do you need your resume spruced up? Hey, do you need to find a laundromat to be able to do your laundry? Hey, what does it look like for you to be able to go to the grocery store? So a lifestyle consultant, we really put everything together. It's because, again, if our clients do not have, shelter and food and feel safe, they cannot put their recovery first. And so we have to, in some way, shape, or form, serve as a lifestyle consultant to help them have these basic needs met, and also for us to go about finding these basic needs in an ethical manner, so that when they get their laundry done or they get their groceries, they know that, hey, like, we're going about it in a way that's with integrity, that is not disempowering, and not in a way that they're going to question, like, are you sure this is okay? It's like, no, we go about it in a way, again, that makes them feel like, okay, I can do this on my own, even without my coach's guidance. So these are the recovery coach roles. And there is something with ethics, again, that is seeded into every single one of these roles. Um, Moving on. Now we're going to get into our values, and how also these values do relate to ethical considerations, right? The first one is acceptance, and that's learning the diverse pathways to recovery. We have to remain open-minded. Um, shall I say, like, that is what I believe. Like, I believe, like, recovery coaches should absolutely always remain open-minded, so that we never, ever deny our client a pathway that could be beneficial for them, even if it didn't work for us. The next value that we have is autonomy and choice, that, recovery is voluntary. It must be chosen. We enhance choices and choice making. So again, we do not ever force clients into doing anything that they don't want to do. We do use a lot of motivational interviewing questions to help prompt our clients, to get them thinking about, well, what could happen for you? Like, what if this was possible for you? So we really, again, ethically speaking, help enhance their choices. We never tell them what to do, because, again, this is their path, and we are here to help them. If their path ends up not working, then we come back to the beginning and we start over. But again, it's about understanding that we cannot make anybody be in recovery unless they want to be there. And by allowing that, opens up doors for them to be able to make those choices. And when I say enhance choices and choice making, that's where the resource broker part of us comes in, and community organizer, so that we can be able to show them what is possible if they choose to continue to go for recovery. The next value is fidelity, keeping our promises. That again, that is huge when it comes to, I believe, any line of work, but especially with coaches, because when you have that peer-to-peer relationship, and not only are they sharing a lot of very, sacred parts of their life, and then we share parts of our lives, that trust is something that is so hard to get and so easy to lose. So we really have to be on it when we make promises, or we tell them that we're going to do something. because again, it's so easy to, it's so easy to break that trust, and it's hard to get back if ever. So again, us keeping our promises is a big deal. The next value that the recovery coaches have is discretion, respect privacy, do not gossip, and what I'll say ethically speaking about this with discretion, depending, because with recovery coaching there is still not a lot of regulation that is happening right now for coaches. I'm kind of like, it's like the Oregon Trail, the wild, wild west, right? So it's about really each recovery coach on their own, making sure that, hey, they choose, like, if you're going to be in this line of work, choose to not gossip. And this goes for, especially if you're working on your own, it might be easier for people to respect these lines, especially if recovery coaches are working for organizations, they're working for hospitals, they're working for private practices, because you have, depending on the different places that you work for, you have their employee, their all of their all of their handouts. I can't even, I can't even think of the word at the moment, but you have to sign, their different HIPAA policies, shall I say. But when you work for yourself as a recovery coach right now, you don't have any governing board to report to. You don't have anybody that is regulating you. And so it's really, again, I'll say that word, integrity. Like, we have to have integrity. The next one is loyalty, right? Like, do not give up, offering multiple chances. And that's where I think that recovery coaches play a big role in the field of getting people and helping people stay sober, is because all of us know that recovery is a non-linear journey. I mean, for a lot of people it is. I can honestly tell all of you that relapse was a part of my story before I got sober, which I hope is the last time, one day at a time, but it was a part of my story. And I had people, and I'll never forget that people never gave up on me. And that is huge, because there is so much shame and guilt associated with feeling like you just can't get it, or that you slip or you relapse. And to have somebody like a recovery coach with lived experience in your corner saying, hey, like, get knocked down, get back up, like, let's try something else. Like, that can be the difference between life and death for somebody. At its core, it can be between life and death. And so for recovery coaches to have that compassion and that loyalty, to be able to say, hey, like, let's keep figuring it out, like, you're not a failure, you are failing forward, right? Loyalty is huge. The next one is hope, being able to offer self and others as living proof. We are focusing on the positive strengths, assets, and possibilities rather than the problems and pathology, right? So we are always we are always forward thinking. We do not dig up the past and talk about the past. That is not our area. What we talk about is, hey, like, what is something we can do today, right now, to move the needle so that tomorrow is a better day than today. Like I said, it is a strengths-based approach. We really highlight their assets and possibilities. And an example of that can even be that the simple fact that maybe they feel like they're a failure, they'll never pass, they'll never get a job, they'll never do anything, and bringing up the simple point of, well, tell me, what is one thing that you have done in your life that you have succeeded at? And sometimes they can't come up with it. And that's where you say something like, well, didn't you learn how to ride a bike? Did you graduate high school? Did you learn how to drive a car? Like, those are successes. And being able to take them back, like, on a granular level, hey, like, you do know how to succeed, like, you do know how to do things, is a big deal. And sometimes, like I said, we get to be those people that remind them of that. So hope is something that really, like, I'm always like, we're like that candle, like that the wax never goes down ever. We stay lit, that little glimmer of light, on days where they're like, I just can't see. And we bring them back so that they can have a moment, just even if it's a moment of feeling success. It's like, okay, you have that. So let's move forward. Like, let's do this. More values continue. The next ones are dignity and respect. We express compassion, we accept imperfections, and we honor each other's potential. So again, ethically speaking, we really want to be able to honor their potential, accept their imperfections. And we are still, like, we use recovery positive language. We don't put them down if they keep doing something wrong, or that they can't get something right. It's about, hey, accepting that we are human. Humans are not perfect. And being able to get into acceptance over that, expressing compassion. It's good stuff. The next one is protection. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Okay. It's, we do not harm, we do not exploit, we protect others, and we avoid conflicts of interest. So again, with our morals and our values, like, it is what we choose to do. Is kind of like walk the walk, going down to credibility, but with protection, we do not exploit them. We do not do that. We protect and we avoid conflicts, and it's okay. I always tell people it is okay to agree to disagree on a certain subject matter that you might be talking about, where they want to do something, you don't agree with it, you want to insert your ego. That is where humility comes in. And we say, hey, like, we're gonna agree to disagree, and that's okay. We don't have to agree on this. The do no harm piece in the beginning of that bullet point is, that is like, I'm like, that is our code. It is to our ability every day. We want to make sure we do not harm them. We are dealing and working with people that are potentially super fragile, that have no idea what to expect in this new world of recovery. And so, to the best of our ability, we have to protect and make sure we are not doing any harm to them. It's always, what are we doing that is helpful? Credibility, simple. It's walk what you talk. Again, like I said before, we do not ever ask people to do things that we would not be willing to do. And it's also, about, like, how do you speak to them? Make sure that how you speak to them and how you show up, showing up on time, ending sessions on time. How do you look when you show up? Really walking the walk of how you want them to be able to feel. Humility, huge. I'm like, your ego is not your amigo. I'll say that again. Your ego is not your amigo. Work within the limitations of your experience and role. We are recovery coaches. We are not therapists. We are not doctors. And so we should not try to be therapists or doctors. And we gain so much more love, respect, and trust from our clients if they have a question about something, whether it's trauma, EMDR, maybe it's something, with a medication, for us to say, hey, I really, that's really not my area of expertise, but let me look into this. Let me find somebody that I know can give you the answer that you deserve, instead of us trying to wing it, right? Like, that is, again, humility is where we have our resource bank. That is why we keep therapists in our back pocket. We keep doctors in our back pocket. So that when situations like that come up, we stay in our lane, we know our experience, we keep our integrity and our morals in check, and we refer out, and we are open and honest about, hey, I don't know, but I know somebody that can help. Sorry, I get passionate about that. That's like a big one. The next is advocacy. We challenge injustice. We are a voice for the voiceless. We empower others to speak. So we really are there to be that voice for recovery. We are there to empower them to say, hey, this is not how your story has to end. Like, you have a choice now. So many people entering recovery don't feel that they have a choice. They feel unjust, again, like being like, well, it's never going to be fair. I'm never going to get XYZ. And we get to be that voice and advocate for them and say, hey, yes, you can. Like, you do have a voice, like, you can do this. The next is stewardship, again, is using resources wisely. And that even goes back again to multi-party vulnerability, making sure that we are using our resources wisely. We're not, overusing one compared to the other, that we're continuing to stay educated, up to date on what is going on in our area, so we know what resources are going to benefit our clients. Gratitude and service. We carry hope to individuals, families, and communities. Pretty straightforward. Recovery, all service hinges on personal recovery. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that we are all about their personal recovery, not recovery at large. It's your personal recovery. Use of self is knowing thyself, be the face of recovery, tell your story, and know when to use your story. So again, there's a time and a place for when to talk about your story. There's also lines that we don't cross with the detail and what we share. Is that harmful? Is it going to be traumatic? So knowing, like really knowing what parts of our story are going to be acceptable and useful instead of harmful and disempowering. Capability is we as recovery coaches always need to continue to improve ourselves and give our best no matter what. Honesty, kind of like credibility, tell your truth, separate fact from opinion. And that's a big one because we also need to realize when we're on a peer-to-peer level, it's not always about our opinion, because if we try to force our opinion, then who is this really about? Is it really about the client, or is it about us and our personal gain for sharing our opinion, right? So being able to separate facts from opinions, and if we don't have the facts, being able to admit that, find the facts so that they have the right information, that it's not just your opinion. And then also when we're wrong, admit it. Like I said, we are humans. We make mistakes. We're not perfect. And if we're wrong, if we give them the number to a therapist that we thought did EMDR and they don't do it, and they come back, our client upset, we can say, hey, I'm really sorry. I thought they did it. I didn't do my research. I won't do that again. Again, just being humble. Like humility is huge in recovery coaching, and also like ethically speaking. Authenticity of voice, accurately represent your recovery experience and the role from which you are speaking, always like representing our experience from our role. All right, finishing up almost. Now that we kind of talked about the roles and the values, we now have what I like to call the fine line, that fine line of recovery coaching. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like friend versus coach, like, whew. All right, here we go. Recovery coaches need to be aware of the individual, social, and community impact of personal decisions. Again, us as coaches, even when we are not working with clients and people know we are coaches, we are seen. I always tell people, like, even when you are off the clock, and because when we're off the clock, we're still attending meetings, we're doing our research, people know us, we're getting involved in community organizing. We need to be aware of the impact of our personal decisions of where we choose to be. A very easy example of this is, do recovery coaches really, even though we're in recovery, do we really want to be seen in a bar 3 nights a week playing pool? Even though pool's our jam, we have to ask ourselves, like, what is the look that we are giving to the recovery community? Like, is this something that you would recommend to your client? Probably not. Okay. So personal decisions, like, it's just like, that's something that comes with the course of a coach. Personal decisions and behaviors pose challenges to and opportunities for ethical behavior, just like we talked about with the bar, with the bar example. Like, our ethical behavior is not just about when we're working with clients, but it really is, how are we carrying ourselves in the community at large? Because we are trying to use, like I said, one of our attributes is an ally and confidant. We are an ally to the client, but also to the recovery community. So what are our decisions and behaviors looking like? And are they going to pose challenges for ethical behavior? This dynamic drives the need for personal and professional code of ethics, like, just plain and simple. So yeah, it's like kind of one of those things, even though when you're not working with people, you continuously need to work on yourself. So ethical decision-making, as we wrap it up. Decision making, things to consider. So as recovery coaches, whether we're working with people or we're out and about, asking ourselves, what course of action advances the common good? Really, what course of action? What course of action develops moral virtues, right? What benefits and what harms will each course of action produce, and which alternative will lead to the best overall consequences, right? So I like to say, like, what is the best overall consequence? Because no matter what, somebody's going to see something wrong with what we're doing. So what is the least amount of hit that we're going to take for what we're doing, right? So we have to look at our course of actions. What moral rights do the affected parties have? And which course of action best respects those rights? So what, morally speaking, do the affected parties have with, with the course of actions that we're taking? Most decisions, I will say, can be made by gaining facts, figures, and weighing options. So it's up to us. Sometimes, like, we just can't wing it. Honestly, we can't. We have to sometimes, if we, like I always say, tell, other recovery coaches, if you even ask yourself for 1 minute, like, is this okay? It's probably not okay. So take a step back, gain facts, figures, and weigh options, before making a decision. Again, harmful or helpful, empowering, disempowering. Brief discussion of legality. Again, 42 CFR Part 2 for recovery coaches. So this, obviously, this requires patients to consent for disclosure of protected health information, even for the purposes of treatment, payment, or healthcare operations. Consent for disclosure must be in writing. This is something that happens for recovery coaches that they are a part of, if they're working for organizations. This is not something that really falls under recovery coaches, again, if they're flying solo and they're working for themselves. Mandatory reporting. So this is also, again, that's something that is in for recovery coaches. It's in our infancy. Mandatory reporting laws differ from state to state and even from agency to agency within a state or jurisdiction. Recovery coaches need to understand how their agency/organization interprets these laws and what their policies and procedures are regarding them. So recovery coaches, if they are working for people, they need to understand what they need to follow. But again, if they're working for themselves right now, there's nothing really governing them, so they don't have to really worry about some of these laws. And that's where, again, like, we're in the infancy, and I truly believe on a day-to-day basis, we're going to get more and more regulations coming in for recovery coaching, especially because now we are being accepted by insurance companies. All right, and there you have it. Ethical considerations for recovery coaches. I want to say, I know that was a lot of information. I hope that you guys had some takeaways from it. And I want to just go ahead and say thank you so much for attending Ethical Considerations for Recovery Coaches. Do we have any questions?
We do. And real quick, just to give it, if there are any additional questions, if you guys could go ahead and type them in the chat box. That we have a couple in the queue. Just want to give you the chance to do so. One of them came pretty early on, and Debbie has asked, one of our peer support workers is starting to date a client. Besides being completely wrong, what implications can this have for our organization?
I'm sorry, Christy, you kind of cut out a tidbit. Can you repeat that?
Sorry. Let's try this again. One of our peer support workers is starting to date a client. Besides being completely wrong, what implications can this have for our organization?
I'm kind of like, where do you want me to start? Again, like, if this is something that is known, Debbie, I will say, if it is actually known in the company, you have to ask the company has to ask themselves, what is the image that they are trying to portray to the community? Do they want to be known does your agency want to be known as a place where you allow this type of intimacy? Do you allow it? And the answer should be no. And so you really need to, be able to go back to your supervisor and to be able to really have them think about, like, what is it that you really want to be portrayed to the community? Because again, like, it's one of those things that doesn't stay quiet. And ethically speaking, that, repercussions depending on your organization and what they signed on for with their handbook. Disciplinary actions, should be taken.
Perfect. Thank you, Debbie. I hope that answers your question. I have another one for you. Mackenzie has asked for you to clarify what is the large or small A advocate?
So the small A, and great question, Mackenzie. So the small A is us. Like we are an advocate. We are a person who supports recovery. Big A is the advocate. Like I am advocating for my clients. So it's one is singular, big A is singular, small A is the group, the community at large.
Okay. So we got a couple of more questions. Debbie has also asked if there is a template for consent to disclosure.
Not to my knowledge, Debbie, great question. I do have a personal one that I use. But again, that is something that, because it is so new, people are having to create their own consent for disclosures, depending on, again, their agency, their morals and values. So again, you have to ask, like, I'm going to say no. And that is something that can be easily created, because it can be something that you can reword even from a consent to disclosure if you're working with clients at your organization. There aren't recovery coach clients yet, but any consent to disclosure can be reworded to work for recovery coaches. And I can always, you can always email me. I have my contact information I'll put up to be able to help guide you to make sure that you have something in place.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Michael. Susie has a question for you. What if you are a recovering family member from addiction or alcoholism rather than recovering from addiction or alcoholism? Is that okay for recovery coaching?
Yes, Susie Howe, like 100%, people can be recovery coaches even though you're not in recovery, if you're an ally to recovery, you have incredible lived experience and you have a different angle of lived experience that is so necessary and so needed for people getting into recovery. Like, oh, yes.
Perfect. I think that's all we have at this point. Michael, do you have a slide with your contact information?
Yes, I need to. Oh, there it is.
There you are.
Right
Everybody, please feel free to reach out to Michael. She's a wealth of information. She has done a great job just really supporting our alumni and our alumni program, and is an amazing resource within the community. If you also get a chance, I highly suggest you take a listen to her podcast, Monday State of Mind. She addresses some very relevant and amazing and talk-worthy topics every Monday morning. So if you'd like information about that, reach out to her there. Michael, thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation, and I'm so grateful for you. We have a new webinar coming up next month. It is Addiction and Schizophrenia, and it is presented by Dr. Alan Fine from Colorado Recovery. Please keep an eye out for that information. We'd love to have you join us. And just so you know, Michael, you've got a whole bunch of thank yous coming up across the chat box. So great presentation. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.